I think when you realize so much of this for so long has relied on our cooperation and us assuming, because that's what we do as humans, like you always assume the best and you give people the benefit of the doubt. And we've done that for a long time. You think, well, the government are just incompetent, or, you know, it's not a controlled demolition of the country. They're doing the best they can, but they're just failing miserably. They're doing it on purpose. And as soon as that psychological switch happens, and I think a lot of people are hesitant to do that because it's a scary realization to come to, that institutions you thought you could trust, be that media, education, government, healthcare, aren't, you know, and I'm not talking about everybody in that, you know, don't get it twisted. Like, there's a lot of good people doing the best that they can in bad, broken systems at the moment.
Like doctors and nurses.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, systemically, they're broken and they're moving in the wrong direction. And they're not acting in your interest as a whole. And that's a scary realization for people to come to, but it's a necessary one. I think these mistakes were not made. This seems to be how these people operate. Every so often, they'll try it, and if it doesn't succeed, they'll go away and propagandize the population, lull them into a false sense of security, cook up a new crisis, a new ostensible reason to push the same thing that they've been doing for decades. They want you to have a digital biometric, not for your convenience. But it's ultimately, it's a fundamental building block.
But it's happening.
Yeah.
But it's happening because in America, you got real ID. And over here now we've got brick card. What the fuck?
Well, they're pushing for it. But if there was ever a time for just universal mass non-compliance with it, like, I'm sorry, like, there isn't another way. If you don't want it, we all have to say no to it. I'm not trying to pretend this is not serious. It really is. But it's still, at this point, I think the digital ID is a real threshold. Like, if you consent to that, they don't need your permission for anything else. It's the last gate that you can rebel at. So just say no. And they are going to do everything they can to coerce people to get on it.
You are listening to the Dr. Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or his Substack. Or simply buy him a coffee with a one-off donation, links to which can be found at drmalik.com. Now, let's get on with the show.
Appreciate you coming. 2 hours, mate. Long drive. Thank you so much for doing this. You could have said, no, let's just do it remote. You made the effort. I appreciate that. I feel like you get a different conversation when it's in person. And so we're going to talk today about your movie, The Agenda, that you know, Mark Sharman produced and you directed. You know, most of those people that were on it have actually been guests of my show. All of the stuff that was in that movie, I know. But your movie's still a masterpiece. And the reason why it's a masterpiece is because basically all the stuff that I've put together over 300 podcasts, 600 hours of listening and viewing, you've distilled down to just 2 hours, under 2 hours. It's beautiful. Beautifully presented by that lady. You got all this pertinent sound bites. And I think the powerful thing about it is you can stick it in front of a normie and it looks like a BBC documentary. And it will pack a really big punch. So well done, mate.
Sure. High praise. Thank you. Yeah, where do you want to begin?
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you came to the conclusion, realization that this is going on, you and Mark, and, you know, the journey. Like, you know, we talk about the agenda, what these bad people are up to. I mean, if you told someone off the street, look, this is the plan, people would think you're off your rockers.
Correct.
But the way you've presented it, it's not just it's rockers. It's kind of like, yeah, this is inevitable. This actually explains everything we're seeing today. The complete shit show of our education system, the trans issue, the ESG, the DEI, the mass migrate, everything, the green agenda, it all starts to make sense. Right. So dig in, buddy.
Sure. So, I mean, Mark and myself sort of were on different paths for a little while. So prior to 2020, I was working as a camera operator and an editor, not doing anything, you know, keeping out of trouble. I was just, that was how I earned a living. And, you know, I wasn't doing super glamorous stuff, but it was enough to pay the bills. And it was a career that I was passionate about and I enjoyed. When 2020 happened, like a lot of us, I suppose, got the sense very early on that what we were being presented with, the official version of events, wasn't adding up. Didn't feel like we were being given the truth of things. And so began looking for alternative explanations for what was happening. Because I was largely politically apathetic towards politics and to geopolitics in general. But COVID felt like, okay, so this is now, it's not something that's going on in the background and that other people can talk about. It was at our front door, whatever it was impacting our lives. So I just had a daughter in the summer of 2019, got her a passport almost right away. And I, had all these plans, me and my partner, we were going to show it the world. And, as you do when you have kids, you make plans, and all of that was brought to a standstill immediately through COVID. It's like, okay, I have to pay attention to this. And the more that you began to peel away layers of it, the more you realize, okay, that's not true. That's not true. And just the scale of the deception was massive. And so that sort of started my journey in 2020. And by September of 2020, I felt compelled enough that I could see there was an online sort of resistance growing. You saw groups like Stand Up X and Piers Corbyn and people that were taking to the streets in small numbers at that time. But the numbers were growing, and there started to be these demonstrations in Trafalgar Square. And I thought, okay, I couldn't make the first one. And I think that was one where David Icke spoke, and Kate Shamarani was there, and some of these people that were right there from the beginning. And I was a bit gutted because I saw online what was going on, and I felt like I wanted to be there. So September of 2020, okay, I'm going to go. And if I'm going to go, I'm going to shoot it. And so a friend of mine, Liam, we went and we recorded it quite naively. I'd never been to a protest before in my life. And we rocked up with a bunch of broadcast quality cameras, and people were looking at us like, who are you guys? Like, who are you working for? And we recorded that demonstration on the 19th of September, 2020. And it was crazy. I mean, like at the end, TSG came in with batons raised, broke it up very aggressively. And it was there in your face. Like,
what does TSG stand for again? They're the police.
Territorial Support Group, I think. Don't quote me on that. But basically the riot police. Of the Met, yeah.
Yeah, the
and
heavies.
They just charged at a peaceful protest in full riot gear. It was crazy. And that was the first thing I ever went to. But the organizer of that event, as it happened, is a lady called Fiona Hine, who ended up organizing a lot of the marches and stuff that happened the following year. She was due to go to a press conference that she was organizing in Berlin, like a couple of weeks from that time. And there's a collective of doctors and scientists that had begun getting together. And that was a group called the World Doctors Alliance. It was people like Professor Dolores Cahill, Dr. Heiko Schoening, and people. They were getting together in Berlin. And when they saw our coverage of that one protest, they're like, you need to come and film this. So like just by accident, really, just by chance of going there on that September day, we got that invitation. And to be honest, one thing's just led to another. I didn't know in 2020 what me doing something about what was happening would look like. And it's just happened very organically. And I can do this. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I can, I think, produce video to a high standard, to a broadcast standard. And I can offer that skill. I can't do much more, but I can do that. And if that's of use to...
You can tell a story.
Right. Then that's what I was going to do. And it could have fallen on deaf ears, but it seems what we were doing seemed to resonate with people more and more. So we kept doing it. And, we started covering the freedom marches that happened in September, the April of 21. It was March, April, the big sort of marches where you were talking like hundreds of thousands of people were on the streets. And it became very clear that the legacy media either weren't covering them at all, so they were lying by omission, or they would very selectively report on, downplay the numbers, say it was hundreds of people, and give the impression that it was a bunch of violent extremists, which just wasn't the case. Anybody that was there could tell that it was peaceful, and, there were children there was families, and there were people from all facets of society. And so that to me was like the media playing their hand. Like, they don't want you to know how many people think like you. And they can't afford for people to understand. That's why they're not talking about this stuff. So we covered it. And again, I didn't think anything of it, like, because I was just going to London and recording what was happening on that day. And now I look back on some of that footage and the aerial footage of the marches that we captured, and people to this day are like, thank you for filming that, because it was a moment in time, I think, to show. I know a lot of people are a little bit apathetic and think, what's the point in protesting? You're not going to change the government's mind. To me, that's not what that was about. It was a show of solidarity and a visual display of, one, we're not complying with lockdowns and mandates and everything that we were being presented with. But two, there's loads of us. And it was a show of numbers, and it was as a
I think it does make a difference.
And they definitely took note. I mean, you look at the NHS 100K that happened in January 22.
I was there.
Yeah.
My wife and I were there. And the thing is, the way I would look at it is, yeah, okay, fine. You know, the big Gulf War march, and they took no notice of that. But they kind of do. I think even if they still go ahead, it stays their hand. They pull their punches. They slow down a little bit. They go, oh, shit, they're on to us. I mean, just take the opposite example. If no one protested, then they are steamrolling ahead.
Absolutely.
At full speed.
I think we have vaccine passports now if people didn't protest.
Absolutely. So that's what I mean. It'd be mandated. It'd be vaccine passport. They'd be like, they're all at home watching, you know, football and God knows Celebrity Island, God knows what. Yeah, let's crack on with it. Then it's like, oh shit, there's a ton of them outside. Oh fuck, we need to slow down a bit. You know, like really turn the dial down, and just, so they're still going to go forward.
Yeah.
But they're just doing it at a much slower pace. And then they're like, right, let's get out all the propaganda and behavioral manipulation. Shit, folks, we're going to have to work on the crowd. We're going to have to persuade them. You know, it's a ball ache for them. And that's that. But just being out there and seeing your fellow man and woman out marching gives you strength. You go, I'm not alone after all.
Yeah.
Here's my freaking tribe.
Yeah.
So yes and no, it's not, doesn't do anything, but I think on the whole we should protest. We should get out in the streets.
If you're expecting political reform and you're expecting Parliament to look at that and go, oh, sorry, they're not going to do that. They're not going to change course, because ultimately these policies aren't national policies. They're coming from above the level of nation, right? And that's a realization that, you know, I went on that journey in 2020, and when you realize that the entire world effectively was moving in lockstep, you think the power structure that we're presented with, this idea that we elect our leaders and they're in control, like the whole world was moving in lockstep in the same direction with these anti-science policies of lockdowns, never proven, never recommended, and all pursuing this idea that you're all to stay in your homes and social distance, and you know, small and medium-sized businesses are going to be closed to the point of like bankruptcy until this magical vaccine arrives in record time. And the vaccine is the solution. And that was the narrative. And anybody that deviated from that in any way was a heretic, and they were to be smashed, basically.
Squished like a bug under the shoe.
So these policies are coming from on high. Politicians aren't going to change course just because you protest. But as you say, it's a show of solidarity. You meet like-minded people there, and you can't underestimate that. And finding your tribe, I think, at this point is massively important.
Yeah.
And as you say, that they are constantly, so much of that was driven by, and this stuff still is driven by behavioral science, you know, the scientific advisory group, the behavioral insights team, they're polling the population all the time. They need to gauge where they're at. Or do we need to ease off? Do we need to, so as much as you possibly can, show that we're not going along with this. And they know that there's far more of us than them. And that's why I think any other point in history, which is kind of what we touch upon in the agenda, it wouldn't have been possible for the few to effectively wage war on the many. It'd be suicide. But as we show, technology is sort of becoming this great equalizer that's enabled them to centralize control to a point that's sort of ultimately coming to its end game if we don't push back on it. So, I mean, that is what's happening. That might sound far-fetched to somebody that's not sort of floated the idea before, but there is a transnational ruling class that have effectively declared war on the majority of humanity. And I think they fundamentally believe that, I think they've tolerated humans for a long time because they've needed them for the workforce and to essentially build the bars of this prison we're finding ourselves very close to being in. But they believe that they don't believe in the sanctity of human life. They don't really have any respect for divinity, and they don't value human life. And I think they truly believe a lot of us are useless eaters that could be done away with at a moment's notice. And they think AI and the machine is effectively going to self-govern, and they don't have a place for the majority of us going forwards.
They're such a funny bunch of people. I mean, I swear to God, because they derive so much of their pleasure, their art, their music, their clothes, their designed yachts, their palaces, the architecture, the interior design, everything comes from us, the useless eaters. Like, they don't realize that if it wasn't for us, and the fact that there's so many of us, and the more of us there is, the more bountiful innovation and creativity and magic happens. Like, you know, that's what happens when you have more human beings. The world becomes a far more interesting place.
Yeah.
And they derive so much of their sustenance and pleasure and existence from us. But at the same time, they hate us. And it's like, what the hell? What is wrong with you guys? But, you know, you talked about, I mean, in your movie, you did it beautifully. But there's points where, for example, the people are parroting the same lines. And it's not just the media, it's the politicians. So you've got the clips of the newscasters all saying the same thing, like in 50 different cameras, like 50 different news outlets, word for word, the same script. Then you got the politicians, whether it's build back better, what the hell? Like, across the world, they're all saying the same thing. And like you said, the only rational explanation is the messaging is coming from above the single media company or the government itself. It's transnational. It's undeniable. There is some guiding hand. But then a lot of people go, oh, well, that's a crazy conspiracy theory if you think there's just a few people, you know, in a boardroom making all these decisions. Well, maybe not one boardroom, maybe several boardrooms, but yeah, I think this is by design. I'm not going to go with the idea that mistakes just happened, like Margaret and Alice said, or, you know, it's just grand incompetence. This is a design, and it's a very sophisticated design. Am I right?
I would say so. I think it's been a long time in the making. I mean, in the agenda, we sort of go as far back as sort of 1950s Rockefeller Brothers era, Club of Rome. You look at what that think tank was doing in the 1960s at the behest of the Rockefeller Foundation and similar people in that circle. But you can go back way further than that to sort of the turn of the 1900s, the Alfred Milner Roundtable Group, Fabian Society, this same ideology.
Malthusian.
Correct. Right. You can keep going back further than that.
Malthus, whatever his name was.
Thomas Malthus,
That's it, Thomas Malthus.
Yeah. Same idea that was sort of revived with the Club of Rome and the sort of neo-Malthusian ideas that there are limits to growth, ultimately, and we need to interfere with Mother Nature and intelligent design. And it's the same mindset that we're met with now, these lunatics that think that they can tamper with the human genome and they can do human 2.0 and they can do intelligent design better. And cows are broken. We need to fix cows. Like, these people are nuts, but that mindset goes back a long way. You know, this isn't new. And it's only when you start looking, you realize it's the same people and the same networks. So is it, you know, the sort of cliche bunch of people in a dark, smoky room? I think it's more complicated than that. But effectively, yeah, there is global coordination, and it's been a long time in the making. And I think there are layers to it. So I think there are people that are sort of captured by the ideology. Like, they arguably, some of the people parroting this nonsense and delivering it to us in Parliament believe it. Right, they believe there's a climate crisis. Yeah. It's not like they're part of some grand scheme. They actually are captured by this ideology. I think that's true of a lot of the media as well.
Well, it's like all the young kids who think the planet's dying and are hysterical about it. They genuinely believe that.
Yep. But at the UN level, they're talking about using children as change agents. Like, they've identified that if you can capture the youth. I mean, I had the same revelation, you know, through 2020, 21 time. So I'm hearing people saying that climate change is not real. And I thought, but I know it's real. Like, how do I know it's real? And then I go back in my head and, yeah, because they told me in school, and I hear it in the news all the time, and I see it in films. It's like, huh. Yeah, I don't know that it's real. I've just been told that it's real. I've believed it.
It's all these invisible things.
Right.
Aren't invisible things just wonderful? Invisible climate change, invisible viruses, invisible pandemics, these problems halfway around the world that are invisible. And like Nick Hudson says, these global problems that need global solutions equals a scam.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at these people have written for long periods of time massive reports. I mean, there's a very good researcher that people should look up. He's very shadow banned, but he goes by the name of Escape Key. You might have come across him.
Oh, I've heard of him. Yeah.
He's sort of going through all of this.
I asked him to come on the podcast. He said he'd think about it.
Yeah, I've never met him, but we exchanged messages and stuff. And but he's going through at like a forensic level all of this globalist literature, which is so really thick, dense reports, and I think they're designed to be unreadable and impenetrable. But they tell you effectively what they're doing. If you can read between the lines and the sort of Orwellian doublespeak with these people talking, they've told you. And in the 1950s, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund funded this enormous special studies project report, which took place over years, which is headed up by Henry Kissinger. And it was basically, they said they went looking for the biggest challenges to America's foreign policy. So basically what they were doing was trying to steer through what would go on to be the Trilateral Commission, American foreign policy towards global problems. Bearing in mind, they literally just paid significant money to found the UN and the Rockefellers contributed to the UN's headquarters. They went looking for global problems to necessitate a global body, but again, above the level of nation. And
the movie highlights the text. Yeah. It's there in black and white.
But they say it all the way through that report, and they identified disease and climate change effectively, even then. And then a decade later, the Club of Rome, again, people in the same circle, but Aurelio Peche, Alexander King, Rockefeller money, they founded on a Rockefeller estate. They funded research at MIT with computer modeling. Does that sound familiar?
Love modeling. I love a bit of modeling.
to basically, that became limits to growth. And that's been held up as like this
Bible
benchmark piece of research. It was, come on. It's their Bible because they funded research in the direction that they wanted to shift the world. And they've used that to justify what they've done ever since.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. Do
you want to hear something really funny? So I sustain a living now because I'm a victim of the DEI ESG crap. I was speaking out against the vaccines. My medical directors came down heavy on me. What they ultimately used their tool of cancelling me was, oh, you did some trans tweets and you're transphobic. We've had complaints, anonymous complaints. And, all these companies have got little email banners at the bottom, LGBTQ plus friendly and blah, 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 blah. And they use that now. And these DEI, ESG quotas are used to punish any dissidents. If you're a troublemaker, if you're not, their funding stream could be impacted because of one problematic doctor. So it's just, let's get rid of that doctor.
Yeah.
So that's what they did with me. So they got rid of me. So I'm a victim of that. So I now sustain myself through these subscriptions. People pay me for 1 in 3 of my podcasts. This will not be behind a paywall. I want everyone to hear this one. Everybody needs to watch this movie Agenda. But I get email notification, when people subscribe. And there was one Abby Rockefeller
really?
Who signed up for $5 a month.
Interesting.
And I was like, wow, that's fucking interesting. So I emailed, like I do all my subscribers, thank you very much for joining. Are you like a proper Rockefeller? And she was like, yeah, she came back to me. I was like, well, that's fucking disappointing. I was hoping it'd be like $5,000 a month you pay. You can set your own rate, by the way, like $5 a month, like you missed a few zeros. Like, God, geez, you could have like fucking splashed out on me a bit.
Right, yeah, I think they can afford it.
Because she said, I love your Substack and your podcast. So I was like, great, well, what the fuck? Because that's like a slap on my face, like if with your wallet. Anyway, I said, it'd be really good to chat to you and everything. So I spoke to her. And was
it really her?
It was really her. It was the most bizarre fucking conversation ever. And she was saying how there's like really bad people out there and they're behind COVID and mRNA jabs, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, why? A lot of people say it's your foundation and your dad and grandfather who were behind it all. she goes, oh, my dad made some mistakes and he trusted the wrong people like Kissinger, but like the foundation isn't even under our control anymore. It's other people. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, I'd say.
It's like, what the fuck?
Have you told anyone that before?
I've mentioned it once or twice before, yeah. But it's fucking surreal.
Yeah.
Fucking surreal.
Jeez.
And then it was like, yeah, it was just like we started talking about how to fix things, and then we had this kind of weird conversation, philosophical, about economics and how she was saying how capitalism is a problem and blah blah, and I was like, well, you sound very much like a Marxist, and I'm not a Marxist. And she was like, well, yeah, well, he made some good points, and this is what happens with capitalism ultimately. I said, but the problem we have right now isn't free market capitalism. What we have, crony capitalism, partnerships between governments and corporations and a few, I hate to use the word elite, but predator classes using our taxpayer money that are unaccountable. And that's the problem. It's a corruption of even capitalism.
Yeah.
So we're having this weird philosophical conversation. I remember where it was. I was in Sear Green, a village outside a pub. My family's inside waiting for me. So I had to say, look, I have to go now. But it's just bizarre.
Bye, Abby Rockefeller.
Bye, Abby Rockefeller.
But yeah, I mean, so Catherine Austin Fitts in the film, who's a finance lady. I'm sure a lot of your audience will probably be familiar with her. She says that central bankers, in particular, plan, if not a century, but like decades in advance of things happening. So we make the case in the film that when they sort of set up the Federal Reserve and, sort of modern monetary theory as we understand it now, they probably knew, even like back then, that it had an expiry date,
a shelf life,
right? And we've seen through QE, like since 2008, but rapidly accelerated money printing through COVID. It feels like we're on like a one-way trajectory to a serious financial crisis. But I think they knew that, because ever since then, that was when they were sort of floating this idea of technocracy at Columbia University. They were doing this research for what was effectively a replacement for capitalism and free enterprise.
Yeah.
So for, the Rockefellers, it would make sense that even though they've benefited immensely from capitalism
and oil,
right, they're now parroting this idea that capitalism's bad because look at all this corruption and everything. But what they mean is that they're pushing for an alternative to it that they've cooked up.
It's like the game of Monopoly. So they've won all the hotels and all the properties,
hoovered up the resources,
and said this game's shit. Now I've got all the money and all the power. Let's make a new game based on these new rules, and you'll still have nothing. Be happy. It's just they've stitched up the game now.
Yeah.
So they've stitched up the game. They don't need to play the game anymore because they've got all the resources. They've got all the money. And I will talk about the fact that we've ended the age of consumption. It's now the age of control and consolidation. They don't need us anymore for the money. They've got it. They've got everything they want. What they want to do now is hold on to it and have less of us because we're of no use to them anymore.
Yeah. I think they've had a fear that probably goes back to the Victorian age of this sort of the elite. I mean, it's an ideology rooted in eugenics, but about ring fencing wealth. So they feel entitled. They feel entitled to steer humanity in a direction, and they take a lot of Darwin's work, survival of the fittest sort of mentality, to justify, well, we're in a position to do this stuff and to be stewards of the earth, and it's our duty. If we don't do it, somebody else will. It's a very bizarre mindset that they appear to have, but certainly eugenics was quite outwardly talked about in the first half of the, pre-World War II. A lot of these people in these circles were openly talking about that.
And then it carried on, Planned Parenthood and everything. And
it went underground. But then, through Operation Paperclip, etc., a lot of the Nazi scientists were moved into America and it just went underground. It wasn't spoken about. But you listen to what somebody like Julian Huxley, Aldous Huxley's brother, was saying around that time, who happened to be the first director of UNESCO at the UN. So I don't think Aldous Huxley was a prophet. I think he knew.
Yeah.
And the Huxleys were, very going back to Darwin's age. Thomas Huxley, their grandfather was known as Darwin's bulldog. He was sort of a huge advocate of that mentality. And it's a eugenics has been there, and I think it's still driving what's happening today. This idea that there's a peasant class and there's an elite class. That's how they look at people.
Do you think it really is just really rich elite individuals and families, and they're just twisted, and they've just almost bought into their own lie and their own bullshit now after all these generations, that they're better than us, that they're entitled to be stewards of the earth, and we're just idiots. And in some respects, they're kind of right, because like most of us are now dumbed down and stupid and ignorant, and if they know everything, I can see why they would look down at us and go, well, look at these idiots. They're idiots. They don't know anything. They're busy eating garbage, not exercising, watching junk TV. You know, they deserve to be treated like this. We're enlightened. We know. Is it just that? Or do you think there's an element of this whole satanic, occult, other garbage as well? You know, because you keep hearing, or is that just a big psyop to steer us off? The fact that these are just greedy, evil individuals?
I mean, I don't know. I think personally that there's got to be more to it than just, I've got all the money, I've got all the power, I'm bored. What am I going to do now? Because they've been moving unilaterally in this direction for over a century or more, pushing for this. And that's something that people struggle to get their heads around, is that people have worked on this, the likes of Maurice Strong, knowing that they would never see the fruits of their labor. What they've done is facilitated this across generations, but they wouldn't even live to see this system come in, if it does come in. And people can't get their heads around that why would you do that? That you
People can't plan a week ahead, never mind generations ahead, mate.
Yeah.
No, seriously. People don't have enough money to plan a month ahead and, or think a week ahead, because their lives are so busy on that hamster wheel. It's just literally living for today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's no foresight, there's no planning, and it's deliberate. It's by design. They've done this to us.
Yeah. We're so bombarded with nonsense, really, on the daily, that it's hard to concentrate. It's harder than ever, I think, with all these digital devices and these always on devices, and we're constantly expected to be, and because everybody's like that, somebody sends you a text and they expect you to respond. It's like, where's your phone? I'm trying to get hold of you. And we're all expected. There's like this social pressure to always be available at a moment's notice. And so you've really got to go out of your way, I think, to detach from that as much as possible, I think. And whenever you do, you feel better for it. Go and be in nature and just switch off from, I'm not saying go be a Luddite and live in a cave, but if you're consciously detaching from it every so often and putting yourself and your immediate circle first, I think that's important. Because I think if you're afraid, whether you're afraid because you believe what you're being told on television, or you're afraid because you can see what's happening, they win either way, because you're not living your best life and you're just effectively in a pit of despair. I think a way to actually be defiant in this is to be proactive and make a contribution to people around you, and go out of your way to leave a better scene than you walked into.
Absolutely. So listen, if you were going to do a elevator pitch of what the movie's about, say some normie, God forbid, I apologize if you stumbled onto my podcast and thought and now your brain's just being fried by this conversation. I'd say most of my listeners kind of know what's going on. But say someone's like, oh, Doc Malik, oh, he's got quite a lot of reviews. Oh, let's check this one out. And suddenly starts listening to this podcast and like, what the fuck is going on? Like for that individual, that one person listening, okay, if you were to do a sales pitch, like elevator pitch of what the movie's about, what is the agenda? What would you say? No pressure, but
I know, yeah, on the spot now. I would say if you're in any way struggling to make sense of events of the last few years, if you feel like you've not been able to ask certain questions, if you've not been able to hold power to account, or you don't feel like the media's done that job, then give it 2 hours of your time and see if this fills in some blanks for you. I don't need you to agree with me.
In a nutshell, what is the movie about?
It's Agenda 2030, which is a documented plan started. Effectively, it started as Agenda 21 in 1992. 179 nations agreed to it in Rio de Janeiro, including the United Kingdom. And effectively, it began a long process of the United Nations and other transnational groups usurping power undemocratically from the nation state. So we make pledges that nobody gets to vote on, but we make commitments on a global stage to do certain things and move in a direction. That's what Agenda 21 was, and it became Agenda 2030 in 2015. And if you're looking around what's happening to the farming industry, for example, or if you're looking around what's happening with the so-called pandemic treaty with the WHO and all of these seemingly disparate things, or the influx of surveillance technology and AI creeping in, this sort of totalitarian tiptoe, all these things seem separate. They're not. They're all part of one singular agenda. Mm. And I'm not saying Agenda 2030 is the be-all and end-all, but all roads lead there. And that, you know, there's levels above that, but we are being steered in this country and around the world in that direction of usurping of control out of basically a functioning democracy and even the nation state to justify global governance. You know, not necessarily one world government, because I know that sort of triggers a lot of people, but like global governance. So organizations like the EU are an example, right? The European Union, above the level of a country that are they're not elected, they're unaccountable. And we're seeing power shift in that direction. That's exactly what's happening with the WHO treaty. It's exactly what's happening with the UN Agenda 2030. So if you feel like something's wrong, you're right. And give it a watch. Let me know what you think.
Hi, everybody. So have you ever felt lost after receiving a diagnosis? Nervous, anxious, scared, wishing someone would explain it to you clearly and guide your next steps? I get it, folks. Trust me, I've been there many a time in my last 49 years and 11 months. But don't worry, because I'm here to help you. If you're facing surgery and want to understand your options better, the risks involved, or what questions to ask your surgeon or doctor, this service is for you. Since launching my consultation service 6 weeks ago, I've spoken with all sorts of people navigating really complex health decisions who have felt confused, unheard, or simply overwhelmed. But after the consultation, they've all come back and told me how great they have found it. Just look at the reviews, visit my website, docmalik.com, and go to consultations. One person said they felt truly heard for the first time. Another described how my conversation with them helped them understand what they really needed to heal, not just what they wanted to hear. So I bring both medical experience and honesty to the table. I help you see the bigger picture and make informed decisions about your body and your future. Whether it's understanding your condition, preparing for surgery, or finding clarity on what mainstream doctors may not be telling you, this is your chance to think clearly and move forward with confidence. It's online, it's flexible, it's totally personalized, individualized, and decentralized. So book your consultation today at docmalik.setmore.com or visit my website, docmalik.com, and go to consultations. So let's get you the clarity, the confidence, and the courage to take your next steps on your terms. Lots of love, Doc Malik.
It's like they've even got the technates in Technocracy. So it's the North American technates, the European technate, the Asian technate. And you're right, I feel like we've already got the one world government. All the politicians are singing from the same hymn sheet. They've just not openly come out and said it because I think they know the people aren't ready for that yet, and there'd be like uproar. But in effect, we already have it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, one of the things that your movie inspired me to say was I wrote this piece on my Substack. I'll read it out to you and you can tell me what you think. The irony of saving the fucking planet, right? To save the fucking planet, we will blanket the fields with solar panels. We will blight the hills and coastlines with wind turbines and the sea. We will tear up meadows, wetlands and farmland. We will plant monoculture crops and spray them with poison. We will destroy the biosphere and erase biodiversity. We will crush coral reefs with onshore infrastructure. We will shred bird life and turbine blades. We will silence the hum of insect life. We will poison the soil with heavy metals and glyphosate. Why? To save the fucking planet. We will mine cobalt and lithium in child labour pits. We will strip the earth for rare minerals, often in war zones. We will pollute rivers and water tables beyond repair. We will import concrete and steel from China. We will close our power plants in the name of virtue, while China builds 2 to 3 new coal plants every week to power the factories that make our green tech. The solar panels and wind turbines we pretend are clean. Why? To save the fucking planet. We will become poorer, colder and hungrier. We will ration energy, not production. We will cut down ancient forests for biomass. We will call tree burning renewable. We will turn national parks into battery farms. We will desecrate sacred lands and natural beauty. We will hand control of energy to unelected technocrats. We will obey. We will comply. Why? To save the fucking planet. We will forget what it feels like to be free. We will destroy nature in the name of protecting it. But can't you see? It was never about saving the fucking planet. It's about enslaving, controlling, and culling us, damn it. And no, I haven't quite finished, my friends. The planet might be warming, but it's still cold compared to the Earth's average. We need CO2, or should I say the plants do. It's the gas of life, you fools. The carbon they want to reduce is you tools. The whole green agenda is an inversion, creating pollution and destroying life while claiming to preserve it. It's a weapon to guilt and panic our young and some of the old, to make us harm ourselves. We are not the parasites, it's the ruling predators. That's because of your movie. I was inspired to write that.
Any questions?
Any questions? Right?
There's your elevator pitch right there. Yeah, I got it in one, I would say. The whole thing is this Orwellian doublespeak and this inversion. And they keep telling you it's for your safety, it's for the greater good.
But the climate thing is the wedge. That's the tool they're using, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same piece of weaponized behavioral psychology that was COVID, but for climate, it's been going on a lot longer. So in COVID, you were bombarded with this idea that ultimately it's communitarianism, where the rights of the collective overrule the rights of the individual.
Yeah, you got freedom of speech. You have human rights, except for clause blah 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 blah.
Right.
We know about that, don't we?
Yeah, exactly.
We will grant you these freedoms, but we can also take them away when we want to.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Right. That's not freedom. It's an inversion.
So basically, Philip, I've given you freedom to be in this studio, but I'm also going to take your freedoms away if I want to. Is that freedom for you?
I thought you were going to say get the hell out.
But that's the way they play the game, isn't it?
Yeah. It's doublespeak. Nothing really. And that's why, again, I'd recommend looking at Escape Key's work. And there are lots of other researchers that are going through primary source literature. And you'll see that they don't mean what they say. It's an ostensible reason. And same with a lot of the technology that's being rolled out now, as we show in the film, through the building of this digital prison. There's a sales pitch for a lot of this technology, like a Ring doorbell or even AI in general, that it's for your convenience and it's for your safety and it's wonderful. Yeah. And they're right. Like an Amazon Echo is a phenomenal speaker.
I don't know. I don't have that stuff.
Good for you. Me neither. But from a design standpoint, they're awesome. Like they work, and there's zero barrier to entry for an old person who struggles with technology. Like you tell it, play this song, and it does it. It's like, you couldn't make a better device, except that's the sales pitch. And if you go on Amazon right now, I guarantee you, those devices, Ring doorbells, Amazon Echoes, they'll be discounted at near half price, because they always are. So you think, either they're selling them in such big units or they're selling them at a loss. The idea is to get them into every house right now.
It's like the cars.
Yeah.
So my uncle's over from the States, and it's so hilarious. He didn't want to come on the podcast. He thought, they won't let me back in the country. I've been in America for 50 years, but I'm terrified because of the way this freedom of speech there now is. If I say something, they'll be like, oh, go back to Pakistan, even though you've been an American citizen for 50 years. And he was then saying, oh, but look at this, you know, the technology is amazing. I've got a driverless car. And he loves it. Like, see how great it is. And I'm like, what happens if the car one day says, no, I'm not taking you there?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if the car says, you've been a bad boy and, you know, your carbon credit score is too high, so you're not allowed to travel today or next week? What do you do then? And he goes, well, that wouldn't happen. They wouldn't do that. And that's the problem, I think. The technology is amazing. It's very seductive. It does help in so many ways. But overnight, that same technology could, instead of serving you, be your master.
Quite right. Yeah. I think you should be very careful in recognizing when convenience is being used to lull you in. I mean, Ivor Cummings makes that point in the film, that we're in a stage now of, like, if you think carrot and stick, it's all about carrot for this technology. Everyone's discovering AI and how it can, you know, automate processes and make companies so much more efficient. And it's all wonderful at this stage, but be very aware where dependencies are being formed. And if you find yourself dependent on a piece of technology that is controlled centrally and is, you know, effectively it can be switched off, don't assume there aren't bad actors, and don't assume that those terms can't change. So I think a lot of the AI models that are readily available now, they'll all go behind paywalls, and ultimately I think the goal is to price ordinary people out of them. But right now they're learning from people, and we're sort of all collectively beta. I mean, I'm not. I try to use it as little as possible. And for goodness sake, people like that are listening to this, stop asking Grok and AI. You see that on Twitter a lot, or X?
All the time.
Grok, is this true?
Yeah.
What is that?
What is that? As if they don't get it wrong.
Yeah.
And like, why would you do just, but you know what, dude? This is what I mean by the predators are laughing at us. Do you know, I post things on my X, and if you put an external link, you get less reach,
right,
like significantly. So instead of several thousand views, it'll reach maybe tens or hundreds. Okay, if you put an external web link. So I say, check out episode 391. You can bet top dollar several people will be like, where's the link?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, use your fucking brain. There's my website, there's my bio, I'm on Spotify, I'm on Apple. If you're saying, where's your link? Do you know what? Just don't bother. You're not for my podcast.
Yeah.
Like, you are part of the problem. I know that sounds harsh, and people will be, but like, Philip, we're at war right now.
Yeah.
Right? We are seriously at war, 5th generation non-kinetic warfare. They are fucking culling us, poisoning us, maiming us, dumbing us down. And if humanity doesn't get its shit together, we are fucked royally. Right? And if you're saying, where's the link? You're a fucking big time obstacle.
Right.
I'm sorry if it sounds harsh.
No, I would say,
use your fucking brain.
if you're asking that question, and if you're asking Grok, like, is this true?
Yeah.
You missed the fundamental lesson of COVID, which was self-sufficiency, right? Stop, for the love of God, outsourcing your decision-making to third parties. As much as, I know within reason, like, we have experts because they dedicate their lives to certain disciplines, and in a functioning democracy, that would be great. In a world without corruption, we could trust experts that have dedicated their life to certain fields. What COVID showed you was that corruption is rife. We have perverse incentive systems that have led people to do awful things, and the truth to be distorted over a period of time. So
can I quickly just say
Sure.
something? I've got a thought. I need to get it off my chest. Sorry. But then don't forget where you're going. Imagine we're in the trenches facing the fucking enemy, right? We've got just bayonets and old-fashioned rifles, and they've got Terminator machine robots, right? Going with lasers firing at it, fucking coming across the horizon. That is humanity right now. You got your Terminators with their fucking lasers, and we've got like pitchforks and bayonets. And these people asking Grok and, you know, asking where the link is are like people coming up to us, siding up to us and going, so where's the cafeteria?
Sick. Yeah, you're not wrong.
You're like, Are you fucking kidding? Like, there's a Terminator robot coming and you're asking me where the fucking cafeteria is. Get the fuck out of my way.
Yeah. Seriously, that's it. And recognize like convenience. And this is the problem. I got this question a lot, even after the film come out. What's the solution to all this? And I understand why people ask that question. But you know, also, I think we've been conditioned for a long time.
Can you send me the link to where the solution is, Barbara?
Yeah. I spent 2 hours outlining a problem. It's like, you didn't tell us what the solution was. I was like, first of all, the film was about raising awareness of a problem, because I feel whether it's on an individual level or a global level, you can't solve a problem if you don't acknowledge that there's a problem, right? So
bingo.
Right?
Bingo.
First of all, let's all agree, shit, humanity's in trouble here, and solutions are important, but we've been conditioned to look for quick fixes. This is a bad situation that has been decades, if not centuries, in the making. And you're looking to me like, hey, Phil, so what's the solution to it? I've got some ideas, but like, it's going to take, if it's even possible, it's so deeply entrenched at this point. If it's even, and I hope that it is. And I think that if enough people stop cooperating with it, that would make a huge difference. If it's possible, it's going to take all of us, right? Not you looking to me or looking to Mark or you and saying, what do we do about this? Take some initiative and do it.
Did you not get the memo? I'm the savior. I'm gonna like you. If you vote me and put your trust in just me, I will save you. Like, people actually believe that kind of stuff.
I'd be very weary of anybody selling themselves that. Right. Like, I've got it all sussed out. I know what's going to happen, and just listen to me, and you'll be fine. Sounds pretty sketchy to me. I think when you realize so much of this for so long has relied on our cooperation and us assuming, because that's what we do as humans. Like, if you ever had any interaction with a narcissist or, God forbid, like a psychopath, you realize that it does something to you where you realize you project your value set onto other people. So you always assume the best and you give people the benefit of the doubt. And we've done that for a long time. You think, well, the government are just incompetent, or, it's not a controlled demolition of the country. They're doing the best they can, but they're just failing miserably. No, they're doing it on purpose. And as soon as that psychological switch happens, and I think a lot of people are hesitant to do that because it's a scary realization to come to, that institutions you thought you could trust, be that media, education, government, healthcare, aren't, and I'm not talking about everybody in that, don't get it twisted. Like, there's a lot of good people doing the best that they can in bad, broken systems at the moment.
Like doctors and nurses.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, systemically, they're broken and they're moving in the wrong direction. And they're not acting in your interest as a whole. And that's a scary realization for people to come to, but it's a necessary one. I think these mistakes were not made.
Yeah, 100%. Listen, oh God. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I've said this quite a few times. It's all of us raising our game. Raising our game, raising our consciousness, raising our frequency, our vibration, whatever you want to call it, raising our knowledge, raising like our self-worth and self-love, like not relying on other people to do good for us, taking responsibility for ourselves. If we all lived in that state where we were really sovereign, enlightened, eternal, magical light beings that we are, and we knew it, we wouldn't take shit from anyone. So, for example, when, the WEF Davos meeting happens, do you know what the chauffeur drivers go? Yeah, fuck you, I'm not driving for you. Like, literally go, nah, I'll take another job. The cooks and caterers go, not cooking for these assholes. The pilots go, we're not fucking flying for them. The bed maid, the chamber lady, whatever, the hotel, don't make their beds, don't clean up. Suddenly you got all these rich people who are hungry, can't get anywhere, can't travel, and no one's doing their bidding. Journalists don't answer to their calls. Politicians go, screw you. Suddenly they don't have any power anymore. Guess what? We give them the power. Every single one, whether deliberately, knowingly, or not, we give them the power to execute all of their evil designs. But if enough of us were empowered and emboldened enough and confident within ourselves and enough of us were aware of the agenda, none of this shit would happen. That's the simple fact. And that's why I think raising awareness is so important. And that's why I think movies like yours are really important, because the artistic form, the screen, the evil people know that it is a very powerful medium. Television, tell a lie, tell a vision. That's what it's all about. So we need to use their tools against them, if that makes sense. So they use Hollywood, all this propaganda, all the TV that you see. It's always got a narrative. It's always got a narrative running through it. The planet's dying, the viruses, the contagion, the whatever, you know. So we need to combat that. And that's why I think the screen, the movies are so powerful. And that's why your documentary is like what we need and more. People need to get into this space and start creating this content.
More people, yeah.
So if people want to know how we win and fight back, it's really simple. Like, I'm not kidding. Share my podcast. Share your movie. Tell as many people as possible.
Flood the zone.
Flood the zone. Do you know what? Don't go to Starbucks and drink Starbucks. Don't buy their crap. Don't buy things on credit. Just don't buy into all of their garbage. Go local. Support your small businesses. Isn't it funny, during COVID, all medium-sized businesses and small businesses were shut down?
Yeah.
But McDonald's and Amazon were left intact because they're essential.
Yeah.
Like, that's what people need to understand.
Yeah. It was one of the biggest global wealth transfers in history, was facilitated through, well, BlackRock's going direct initiative, but ultimately through all the money printing. And I would maintain that if the furlough money didn't come, right, it would be an interesting parallel universe to look in on. Everything happened exactly the same, but the furlough money didn't come. I think people are going about their business saying, fuck you, like within 2 weeks.
100%.
If you didn't pay them to stay at home, it wouldn't have mattered, if there was the bubonic plague going around. People just, I need to work, I need money, I have bills to pay. It was hush money. And it was effectively another form of tax that is going to hit us we'll be feeling the consequences of COVID, as from an economic standpoint for generations.
Yeah.
If the country's still around, right?
100%.
Yeah. So it was economic warfare as much as anything else.
But the warfare, how is warfare conducted? It's economics, sanctions and trade embargoes and all that kind of stuff. So money hitting the citizens and the authorities. It's war on the food, war on the water supply, energy, production. That's what war is, isn't it? It's total war.
Yeah. Yeah, they're using every tool at their disposal to wage war.
But if you say these guys are waging war on humanity,
Sounds extreme.
Sounds very extreme. Sounds like you're a crazy person.
Mm-hmm.
But they really are, aren't they?
I would agree. And I think there's, there is something to be said for effective communication and recognizing that, you can't go in guns blazing. You got to try and meet people halfway sometimes, because, otherwise you're just going to put them off. But how bad does this have to get before you start calling a spade a spade? And if you start self-censoring to the point where you're afraid to call something for what it is, they're at war. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
Yeah. So we're waking up people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the plan. We're waking up people slowly. You seem confident that this isn't inevitable, but mate, they've been at this for a very long time.
I'm not peddling hopium. Like I said, it's a really bad situation, and it's very close to, I think if they get the digital ID and they get people to consent to it, and that will come with coercion, the likes of which we've not even seen. So the digital passports was their first go around and it failed, but that was a means through which to onboard people into.
Tony Blair's been at it for 30 years.
Yeah. It's like the way that a shark attacks its prey. Like, it'll come in and it'll take a big bite and it'll swim away and it'll come from another angle. So this seems to be how these people operate. Every so often, they'll try it, and if it doesn't succeed, they'll go away and propagandize the population, lull them into a false sense of security, cook up a new crisis, a new ostensible reason to push the same thing that they've been doing for decades. They want you to have a digital biometric, not for your convenience,
But
it's ultimately it's a fundamental
but it's
building
happening.
block of the yeah.
But it's happening because in America you got real ID,
Mhm.
and over here now we've got brick card.
Mhm.
Like, what the
Well,
fuck?
they're pushing for it, but if there was ever a time for just universal mass non-compliance with it, like, I'm sorry, like, there isn't another way. If you don't want it, we all have to say no to it.
This is the thing.
And I'm not, as I said, I'm not trying to pretend this is not serious. It really is. But it's still, at this point, I think the digital ID is a real threshold. Like, if you consent to that, they don't need your permission for anything else. It's the last gate that you can rebel at. So just say no. And they are going to do everything they can to coerce people to get on it. And I think not limited to young people who are already addicted to social media. They're going to make it a requirement for young people to use social media. So parents, be aware of that. I think that's going to be a huge part of the onboarding, trying to keep kids off of, I mean, my kids aren't on there, but, I just mean generally on a societal level, the idea of keeping your kids off of social media at this point, because they've been systematically addicted to it for over a decade now. If they make that a requirement of using those platforms, you're going to have a hard time getting your child not to sign up for this stuff. So it's gonna take a lot, but I still think we can do it because we don't have a choice ultimately.
It'll be carrot and sticks as well.
Mhm.
It'll be, you'll have full access and it'll be easy and it'll be convenient and it'll be super, just friendly to use.
Yeah.
That'll be the carrot. Then it'll be the stick. Oh, but if you don't do this, it's going to cost you more. You're going to have to go through more hurdles of verification, and it's just more awkward, inconvenient, time consuming. I mean, there's lots of different ways a stick can present itself.
Yeah.
Then they'll create a crisis. There'll be some migrant problem. And we need the real ID to differentiate between these criminals and migrants and illegals and legals.
Here's a solution I made earlier.
Here's a solution. Ta-da. It'll be like lots of different things like this. They'll have like 20 different scenarios about how they can keep pushing and nudging and pushing and nudging.
Mm-hmm.
That's how devious these motherfuckers are. Right? They won't just stop. They'll just keep looking for a wedge in. And every single time a door shuts, they'll go, okay, it's fine. We've got another 10 plans that we've got up our sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're like. And when people need to be vigilant, the problem is people they get tired.
Yep.
Being vigilant, and they get complacent again. They get comfortable again, and they just don't see it coming. And they have this stupid, insane trust of the government. And, if you tell anybody you trust a politician, they'll laugh at your face and go, no, I don't trust a politician. And, and then you say, well, government's just a bunch of politicians. And they go, but I trust the government. It's just, we need to get rid of this trust in authority, in government, in doctors, in scientists, or whatever it is. I keep saying that we need to stop trusting blindly. We need to validate with our own eyes and do our own research. And stop being complacent. But the problem is people have become soft and lazy and are not resilient and are not tough. They are softies. And they get pushed around, they get dumbed down, and they accept it. And you present even a little bit of truth, that's physically uncomfortable for them. They would rather swallow the comfortable lie than the painful truth. There will be people out there who will be laughing at this podcast, cheering it on, fist pumping and going, this is amazing. That's our tribe. Then you'll have other people going, oh my God, this is really uncomfortable. I'm getting really upset. I'm getting really anxious by this. And then they'll go away and watch some shit on TV. And I'm afraid the latter makes up the majority of humanity right now. Yeah. This is why part of me thinks we're fucked.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to take it lying down, is what I'm saying. Like, I've win, lose or draw, we've all got to look ourselves in the mirror on the other side of this, whether it comes in or it doesn't. And, when my kids ask me in 20 years, what were you doing when this stuff was being brought in? I can wholeheartedly say I did everything within my power to stop it. Win, lose or draw. And I'm at peace with that. And come what may of it. And I can't control what the majority of people do.
That's why I'm doing it. For my little babies. I just pointed to the photo of my kids. They're there to remind me. This is why I'm doing it too, buddy. Same as you. I've said it many a times. So, in 20 years' time when my kids go, why the fuck are we in this situation? Like, what were you doing? I'm like, Dad fought for you. At least I fought for you. and so many didn't. And that's what I don't understand. Why I don't understand is why so many parents are not fighting. But Philip, you know what? Recently, I looked into the whole abortion thing. We are really screwed up as a society.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
250,000 babies are murdered every year here. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not religious. Right? Despite my name, I'm not a Muslim. I'm not anything. But I believe in the divine creator and maker.
Mm-hmm.
We are all beautiful beings. Abortion is something that I think has to happen sometimes, rarely, if the mother is in serious harm, you know. But compared to the 250,000 deaths in this country and a million in America, for example, we're talking about a tiny percentage, nowhere near to justify the 250,000. And I'm not, equally, there'll be women up there going, oh, you don't start blaming on women, it's men as well. Yeah, I get all that. But shame on society that we can't protect women and we can't say to them, look, we'll help you. We'll help with these children. That whole freedom sexual revolution was a con. It didn't free women at all. It made them into sex slaves as far as I'm concerned. It made them easily abused and used and exploited by man without any repercussion or responsibility for what they're doing, for putting that semen inside them. And now what we're doing is we've normalized killing 250,000 babies every year, which is a tragedy. That's a life. Life starts at conception. And also these babies are, harvested. Did you know that? Have you even looked into that? They're used
a little bit, yeah. I've not done a huge lot of research in
big pharma, cosmetics, vaccine industry, stem cells. I mean, in America, they use de novo cartilage, which is aborted babies and children up to 13. They take their cartilage from their joints and mince it up, sterilize it, and then reimplant it into adults' knee joints for arthritis. Unbelievable. Do people know that they're having this done to them? Are they happy accepting dead parts of babies in their joints? Sadly, I think many people would accept it. We've just normalized it. We have normalized industrial child sacrifice that makes the Aztecs and Incas and Babylonian people look like amateurs compared to us now. So what I'm trying to say is, this is where we are today in society. We don't give a fuck about our fellow man. We don't give a fuck about the most vulnerable group of humans in the world, the unborn baby. Right? And how do you judge a civilization? How they treat their vulnerable. Well, how are we treating our vulnerable? So this is where we are. And yes, there are psychopaths and bad people at the top, but I think we now live in a psychopathic society.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean by, unless we all up our game and get our shit together, not only will the inevitable happen now, like this shit show, this technocracy digital gulag, we kind of almost deserve it.
Yeah, I think, Nick makes the case in the film that all of these problems, if you were to sort of put them under one umbrella, it's this idea that it's anti-human, right? So there's like the war on human beings and this erosion of our compassion, our empathy for our fellow man, or the sanctity of a human life. We've seen 2 bills come through in the last month that are emblematic of that issue. The assisted suicide bill and the abortion bill that you made reference to, that show you that the sad state of our society, and I don't actually think that's representative of the majority. I think that's representative of a minority of people, but that is a prevailing mindset, and society does feel psychopathic. And I think there's not enough humility. I think when everybody's siloing their lives into social media profiles and like building temples to themselves and elevating themselves at the expense of others, and I think you look at the perpetrators doing this, the likes of your Bill Gates or your Klaus Schwabs. Fundamentally, there is a lack of humility because they're looked at as all powerful and all knowing. They surround themselves with yes people, and nobody has the spine, or they're not around long enough to tell them you're fucking crazy. Right? We're not doing that. That's ridiculous. So practicing the humility to recognize that, well, humans are incredible, but ultimately you answer to a power greater than yourself, right? You're not all knowing. We're flawed. We sin, humans, right? We're not perfect. And that's okay. Like we're here as this life is a lesson, and you strive to do better, but you don't know everything. and thinking that we've somehow reached this point in evolution where we can now go start tampering around with human immune system and all stuff. It's that mindset, that hubris is, I think, the cause of so many problems in the world. And certainly just more respect and more empathy for one another is so needed, because we're seeing the consequences of that now, of this anti-human mindset, and it's not good.
It's not good. I totally agree with that hubris, because coming from the medical field, you know, even as a consultant orthopedic surgeon, I hated the fact that people deferred to me as Mr. Man, like the consultant. I would tell the scrub nurses, just call me by my first name. But you're a surgeon, you're the consultant. I was like, I'm also a human being, just call me Ahmed. We've been operating for a year now. I know everything about your family. We chat over this goddamn foot or ankle every week. Just call me Ahmed. And they're like, okay, Ahmed. You know, I mopped the floors in theatres, but that was very unusual. Most doctors carried a lot of hubris and arrogance about them, the air. And I think maybe it was my working class background or whatever. I just didn't like it. I actually found it quite disgusting. I don't feel I'm better than anyone else. And I won't suck up to anyone, and I won't look down at anyone. I'll just meet people on an equal level. But the medical profession suffers from so much arrogance and hubris, which is so misplaced, because while they might be highly educated, they're highly indoctrinated. While they might be highly educated and intelligent, they're incredibly ignorant. So, for example, when you ask them what true health is, average doctor doesn't have a clue. They're overweight, overstressed, suffering poor sleep, alcoholic, poor relationship at home, you know, not healthy. But they are doctors. And you would think then, you know, a doctor should be measured by how healthy they are. How healthy is their lifestyle? How healthy do they look? Because, you know, you should walk the walk if you're going to be talking the talk. But doctors are just arrogant and on the whole. But, you know, like I said, it's not that they're all bad. Many of them are good people, well-intentioned, but deliberately go through trauma-based mind control in med school, heavily indoctrinated, and come out ignorant. But then they're placed on a pedestal. The Rockefeller system puts them on a pedestal, so that we all have to listen to this person in a white coat, or, you know, figurative white coat. But, you know, they're not to be respected. And that's the same with so many disciplines in the world today, whether it's politicians, scientists, climate scientists, or whatever. These are people who are just suffering from huge amounts of hubris, ego, conflicts of interest, financial issues, and they present themselves as the you know, the arbiters of truth. Nothing could be further from that. And that's why I tell people, everybody, up your game. Do your own research. Remember, that was normal. You would do your own research. It was a normal thing. You'd do your due diligence. But now, like, that's almost like a condescension. It's like up there with conspiracy theories. What? Have you done your own research? Yeah, well, yeah. It's like saying, you know, when you go to buy a car, like, oh, did you do your research and look into the car? Did you check under the bonnet? Did you check the mileage and the service book? And then you get told, no. Like, no, I just listened to the secondhand car dealer. You know, why would I do that? I mean, I trust the expert. I mean, well, how stupid does that sound?
Yeah.
But that's where we are now. We all trust the secondhand car dealer and don't do the homework.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong, is there, with... I don't think it's a good mindset to, like, go through life and think, I don't trust anybody, because that's how you end up, like, spiraling inwards and you won't talk to anybody and you just become a hermit.
But
right?
Trust is earned.
Correct. And there's nothing wrong with saying to somebody respectfully, like, you know, I believe you, but I need to go and verify that for myself. There's no disrespect there, but just, like, as a matter of principle, I need to go and check that. And if anybody's got an issue with that, why would they? You don't say it to be rude. You say it to be certain, especially if it's a big decision. And we were bombarded with that technocratic mindset of trust the experts, trust the science through COVID. It was a huge driving force of it. And the science that they were pushing at us wasn't science, the process, which people assume. It was science, the institution. Science, TM, right? It was the science that's been bought and paid for. And science is never settled. You know, and anybody trying to force your hand to move in a certain direction because the science says so. It's like, okay, I acknowledge that sooner or later we've got to move in a direction and we've got to solve problems. But if you're smacking down dissent and anybody who's deviating from the chosen path is being vilified like they were clearly during COVID, but also with the climate narrative as well, it's very similar. That should make people skeptical. It should be a big red flag for people when that starts happening, because we've seen now the consequences of that during COVID.
100%. You know how, like Nick said, if there's a global problem that requires a global solution, think of a scam. I think it's my one, if I'm going to say anything along those lines, is anything that requires censorship and is labeled misinformation, disinformation, and you get basically censored, cancelled, is something that warrants investigation. And anything that relies on blatant propaganda and behavioral manipulation is probably sinister in origin and is best avoided. It's that simple.
I would say so. And that
I've
was
just kind of formulated that in my head. So if it's censored or labeled misinformation and dangerous, it requires further investigation and interrogation and is likely to hold some truth in it. Anything that requires blatant propaganda and behavioral manipulation has most likely got lies and deceit within it, and should be avoided.
Doesn't mean something's true just because of that, but like warrants further investigation. Completely agree. And look into it for yourself. If you're being told, don't look over here, you should probably go and look at what they're trying to hide from you. Probably a good policy at this point. And
as a kid, you know that. As a kid, you do that.
Yeah.
What do you do when you tell your kids, don't look there? What do they all do? They look.
Yeah, they know. But that was a huge part of my gripe with the media, and ultimately what led to me doing something in 2020 was that mindset that they clearly weren't platforming. As time went on, more and more credentialed people started speaking against the narrative, and you weren't getting the full picture from the media, and they were being smeared and, any pejorative you can think of thrown at them: conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer, dangerous far-right extremists. They did everything they could to silence people. And ultimately now we're on the other side of COVID and we're still getting all these revelations. The net collateral harms of lockdown were evident at the time to anybody paying a bit of attention. What happens when you lock down 80% of the workforce and confine people to their own homes? Like the jab harms, and that is a can of worms in and of itself. It's a massive issue, but like just the collateral damage of lockdown across society, economically, financially for individual families, psychologically, the relationships that tore apart. And the media is so complicit in that, because I would maintain that even if you had everything the same, every structure, every conflict of interest still there, if we had an honest media doing what it should be doing, which is being a fail-safe mechanism between authority and people, asking the right questions, none of it would have happened, because ultimately it was a propaganda operation. So my gripe is with the media, and I feel like, because I didn't quite finish our little history piece at the start, but I got a huge amount of respect for Mark Sharman for doing what he's done. So our paths crossed the beginning of 2022. So we were doing, our work was kind of making some noise, and we did some relatively high profile interviews. Eric Clapton spoke to us about his AstraZeneca vaccine injury, and we just kind of, we weren't in any WhatsApp groups. We were just staying in our own lane, but started making a fair amount of noise. And I got a phone call from Mark in early 2022, and he's like retired from the media for about 10 years at that point. And he was a broadcast executive, not a public figure, but in the industry, well respected, and had a long career. He's successful. He was very instrumental in scaling up Sky, for the Sky Sports, scaling it up into multiple channels, and he did very well, and he was well respected in the media circle. So he had no business doing what he did, but he reached out to me, and I met him for a drink. He said he wanted to make a film, like looking at what we were doing. And for a while I was skeptical, like, who is this guy from the mainstream media? Because I'd had run-ins with the BBC and Rolling Stone and stuff, and they were all hit pieces, so my back was up a bit. But over time, Mark, we did a film called Safe and Effective: Second Opinion in September of 2022. And he earned my respect through that, not only because he basically help finance that and keep me, because this isn't a job for me. Like, I have to work to pay the bills. This is stuff that I'm doing on the side because I think it's important. Mark put his hand in his pocket and was able to support me, and the two of us were basically working in a hired office, piecing that together for nothing. And not only did he risk his reputation at a point where he's worked his whole life in the industry, he was willing to do that. And it kind of, my faith in the media was so dampened. It still is. But I think if more people were like Mark Sharman, like maybe we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in. And I'm proud to consider him a friend at this point. And I'm quite flattered, really, because I'm nobody. You know, I'm a camera guy and I'm an editor. But like for a broadcast executive of his stature to reach out to me, I know he probably wasn't spoiled for choice at the time. But to go and make a film was, you know, it's meant a lot. And I consider him a really good friend now. So he deserves a lot of credence for that.
Well, hopefully he'll come on the show.
Yes.
And I just want to say thanks to him for doing this and supporting you, and recognizing your talent. You're not a nobody. Years from now, people will turn around and go, oh God, Philip Wiseman, yeah, he's amazing. Listen, you are nobody. No one is a nobody. And I just feel like more people need to be brave and step up. Remember what I said? Yeah. All of us need to up our game. There are people out there who are like, oh, I don't want to risk my reputation. I don't want to risk my holiday home. I don't want to risk. You fucking better. Because even if you're a multimillionaire, they're coming for you. Like this idea that it's just the plebs, it's just the poor little people like you and me that are going to be screwed. They're coming for everyone. Like when they said you will own nothing and be happy, it wasn't just, you know, a certain group of people. It's all of us. I think that's what people don't realize. Even if you've got like 10 million or 20 million in your bank, they're coming for you. They are literally coming for you. So don't feel cozy in your nice little house and your big Range Rover that you're going to be fine and all these other people are going to suffer, but you'll have it good. No, you won't. It's not like that. It's proper serfdom. There will be a king in the castle. Everyone else is a peasant. That's what it's coming to. So, I mean, yeah, really good for Mark Sharman stepping up and doing that. And let's hope more people step forward as well, because there are. That's the funny thing. There are people with money and positions of power, people with security who've got nothing to lose, who could be doing something. Yeah. And that's what we need.
I think there's been a lot of people watching from the sidelines and thinking, you know, and this is the danger. Like if somebody looks at your podcast, for example, and thinks, oh, he's got that covered. It's like, no, make your own. Like I said, we need to flood the zone because we're up against 24-hour news cycle. People are being propagandized all the time. You're doing phenomenal work, but like you're one person. Same with me. Like
100%.
If you're looking at anything me and Mark have done or anything we've done under Oracle over the last few years and thinking they've got it covered, get in the fight like right now. And there's a lot of brilliant people in the alternative media space. I think, you know, Wilsey at Resistance GB is doing good work, and there's a lot of people that I think need a lot of support, but there's people willing to do stuff. And, you know, as you said, you know, vote with your money.
Yeah, and be creative. Be creative. You know, I'm booked up till October. I've got 3 podcasts a week till October. You know, and it's because there's no shortage of guests. I've stopped people saying, look, I can't book anymore. I can't book. I need a break. You know, there's no shortage of really interesting people to speak to. But while my podcast is really successful, you know, I have ideas like if I could clone myself, I'd have a completely different type of podcast. It'd be on a 24-hour news cycle. So I'd be like, oh, let's go through today's news and oh, look at the previous 24 hours and look what Keir Starmer said. Like I'm not able to do that because of the way my podcasts work. Most of my conversations, whether it's you hear it now or from a year ago or for next year, it will be relevant. It's just as relevant. It's not a 24-hour news cycle or a weekly news cycle. But there's there's definitely a niche there where people can be like listening to some true authentic opinions and voices, and then you can have different formats. Like, right, mine is like a 90-minute to 2-hour podcast. Not everybody's got the time to do that. You could create sound bites, 5-minute clips. You could do 10-minute clips. You could have a daily roundup of 15 minutes, and people just listen for 15 minutes on their way home or in the evening and get a roundup. You know, there's so many different podcasts and styles, and fucking just get in there, guys. Just jump, just do it. Jump in there. Like you said, flood the zone. And, you know, we talked about, you know, where people saying, oh, where's the link? You know, we're in the trenches and people are asking where the cafeteria is while the Terminator's coming. And it's like, you know, when we need ammunition, we need money to pay the bills and look after ourselves, you know, and take care of this place and keep it running, keep the lights on. Don't spend $5 one day on your Starbucks in the month. Spend it on a subscription that you really value or you like, or donate to the Agenda movie, or subscribe to my channel, because it literally is that one day a month that you sacrifice. I mean, you're giving $5 to Starbucks every day. Now people will be like, oh, you can't take the coffee away from us. Terminator. Yeah, we could do with some help. like Team Devil has fucking zillions of dollars being thrown at their people, and I'm sure you've come into the space of controlled opposition, chaos agents. You know,
we've had accusations.
No, of other people.
Right.
know, other people are out there doing this dirty work for the enemy. There's the overt enemy, and then there's the guerrilla enemy. The enemy is well funded, well organized, well resourced, and we're just in the trenches with the pitchforks. Like, we could do with some help.
Yeah, I would say. And, you know, don't donate out of charity. Like, if you genuinely derive value, like, go looking for, you know, I mean, UK Column, for example, I do phenomenal work, and I big them up any chance I can get. I've come to know Mike and Brian and the whole team there. I think they're like the benchmark as far as regular news in the alternative space in the UK. I think UK Column are awesome. And so I would recommend people go check them out if they don't already. There's lots of good stuff out there, and there could be a lot more, to your point. But yeah, vote with your money, but don't vote out of charity. Like, if you're deriving value from it, if it's adding something to you, support that. Why would you support something that's propagandizing you and, you know, through COVID basically broke up families and led to people getting maimed and injured?
Still breaking up families.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people I talk to who still are actively in the process of now going through a divorce? And I go, why? And they go, oh, COVID, like, we're just on different wavelengths. Like, it was evil. It tore through families, parents, grandparents, children, husbands, wives. It was pure evil.
I couldn't imagine being like one partner in a relationship. One of you is like completely buying the narrative. One of you is wearing a mask and wants your kids to wear masks and wants to get jabs, and the other one doesn't. I mean, that's where a lot of people have found themselves. I mean, luckily my other half, she was with me through this whole journey, and it's been very
wasn't.
Really?
Halfway through, she turned and went, I'm awake now. Dude, it was close. It, like, I thought I was going through divorce number 2. Thankfully, you know, it halted, and now our marriage is even stronger than before. But that was like, that really pissed me off. Yeah. That they did that, because she's a really good person. And like so many people, she's really, really a good, honest, decent, well-intentioned person. Yeah. Right? And they manipulated and abused her good nature. That's the thing with behavioral manipulation. You abuse and exploit people's good nature. So a lot of people, I don't go with the bashing the ordinary folk. You know, yes, a lot of people are being complacent and lazy and irresponsible. Yeah. But they're also victims of abuse, like incessant psychological abuse. So, you know, that's why I get angry. I don't get angry at your Joe Public. I get angry at the authorities, because they know what they're doing so well. And they're abusers. So I fucking can't stand them. Yeah. And I would hang them all, frankly. But, you know, most decent folk were abused and manipulated. My wife was one of them, and she knows that now. And now that she's seen it, she sees the abuser for who they are. Before, she would never have questioned government or authority. Now she's like, yeah, we can't fucking trust them. Because she sees them, you know? But that's what we need to do. We need to wake up more people and realize that these people are abusers. They are not our friends. Masquerading, pretending to be looking after us, cozy government. They're, you know, that paternalistic government will take care of you. Big Brother is watching you and has got your back. No, it hasn't.
Hi, me again. You're listening to the Doc Malik podcast. This show is 100% independent and fully funded by listeners like yourself. So if you wish to support Ahmed in all that he is doing, then please subscribe to his channel on Spotify or on his Substack, or simply buy him a coffee with one of the donation links, which can be found at docmalik.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
Really, yeah. I mean, I remember one of the big protest marches in the summer of 21. They'd always sort of end up at Hyde Park, and me and Liam were like filming the marches at the time, and we'd have like Oracle Films branding on, because by that point people kind of were a bit more friendly and knew who we were. But a lady patted me on the shoulder in Hyde Park when I was just speaking to somebody, and she said, "Look, I don't, I don't know you, but just to say thank you for what you've done." And she lived down in Cornwall, and she was completely isolated. Nobody thought like she did, and she literally said to me that if it wasn't for your content, I don't know where I'd be.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, that's one person out of 100,000 or whatever, but like that's the most rewarding thing. And Safe and Effective's come off of YouTube now. It was just about to hit 1 million views. It got mentioned in Parliament and it got pulled down. But the comments on that, I think that's like the biggest loss for me. It's not the viewership. It wasn't monetized anyway, but the comments. I mean, people were saying...
So annoying that it was taken down.
Somebody said, a colleague of theirs at work had thought they were mad from the beginning. They showed them that film and they came into work and apologized the next day. I'm like, that's the most vindicating thing. And again, that's just one person. I'm not here like trying to self-aggrandize myself. I just mean it's so rewarding. And if you ever think, you know, we're on the right side of this, because while the media spent the entire time causing devastation, causing division, and gaslighting people into thinking they were wrong when they were right. And people have said, like, we did a section on the media in Safe and Effective towards the end, and people said it was cathartic, basically, to realize it's like undoing the gaslighting. Like, you were right. If you were asking questions and you were made to feel like persona non grata, like an extremist or whatever, you were right. And the media's got so much to answer for what they've done to people.
100%.
Yeah.
And you know, when you're saying the media, like the way you feel about the media is the way I feel about doctors. You know, you said like if the media had just done their job, none of this would have happened. Did the same. Can you imagine all the doctors just went, no, we're not trashing medical ethics and informed consent and violating bodily autonomy and this is malfeasance. No, we're not going to take part. Like, just imagine, like even 10% just said no. The whole thing would have fallen down. There were so many, clinch points, weak points where, if people just stood up and said no, like the media said no, journalists just did their job, doctors did their job, where the police did the policing, where the judges did their judging. If people just did their shit, this wouldn't have happened. But anyway, I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a very, very long time. I'm going to thank some of my paid subscribers. They leave notes, by the way, sometimes. And you just reminded me of this. So shout out to Deirdre Coley. Doc Malik has his eyes open. So she's just a new paid subscriber. All these people are paid subscribers who've just left comments on Substack. Kerry Richardson, you are a brave soul. Thank you. I am. Norm Crenshaw, I support your work as I heard you tell the truth that today's corporate doctors are working for Big Pharma and are basically clerks working for paychecks and have given up actual medicine. Sadly, yes. Rosie, we met last night at Bob Moran's thing. I love Bob Moran.
Yeah.
See all his artwork. And I'd meant to start supporting you when I was paid for the first month of my latest contract, but then I got very busy with the contract and failed to. So now I'm supporting you because I saw you and I remembered. So thank you so much. Kirsten Kennedy, I'm subscribed to get in on the chat and to hear a great familiar Scottish accent. Your conversations with Kemi really resonated with me. And I just want to say thank you to Helen Best, Uma Baird, KMT, Philip, Dr. Dean Lloyd, Umara Tarek, Judea Anna Cavato, Radio Fan, Polly Anglin, Bobby P and Ash. These are all people in the last couple of months. No, I wish I had all these subscribers every day, but it's like over the period of like 2 months. But yeah, I just want to say thanks to all these people because, several hundred supporters who keep me going. I'm not rolling in it. I wish I was, because I'm still stuck on an interest-only mortgage, but I can't complain, mate. I'm not in debt. I'm healthy. I'm surrounded by love, and I've got purpose. I'm doing something that's important. And I just want to say thank you to all my listeners who are making that possible.
Thanks.
So I just want to go back to the agenda, right? Let's actually go back a bit. Your career, has it suffered by being outspoken and taking part in these documentaries?
I've lost work, definitely. But and this wasn't so as me and Liam never put ourselves front and center of Oracle Films. Now that wasn't a conscious decision to like hide away. That's always how we've operated. We've been below the line, crew basically, camera operators and editors. So I'm not well versed to being a presenter. You're great at it, but like this isn't sort of
natural for you?
No, it doesn't come natural to me to be sort of public facing. So it's not like I was afraid to do it. It's just that's not what we did. We gave a platform to dissident voices.
I think you're quite good at it.
You think?
Yeah, I think you're pretty good at it, mate. I think a lot of my listeners will be like, wow, he's eloquent, he's articulate, he's free flowing. You're good, mate. Anyway, carry on.
Thanks. Good to know. Should have done it a long time ago. So in that sense, it's been a bit like living a double life in that I can go do this, which is if I could, and it was actually financially sustainable, if I can borrow a word, in the true sense of the word, I would do this all the time, but I can't. So, I go to work and I've got a good enough client base now that know me. And also said, some people have said, can't need. But I get regular work from, and I just go and you go to do a job. I'm a freelance camera operator. You need me to do that. You don't need me to come with opinions or whatever else. So I've been lucky in the sense that I've got good enough client base and that I like doing business with. That's been able to keep me afloat. And I think we were talking about the media just now. I think there's a few honourable mentions, Bob Moran being one. Like a very few honourable exceptions in the mainstream media during COVID. So Bob Moran, Matt Letitia, Majid Nawaz, Mark Stein, all four of them spoke out and deserve a lot of credit for that. They also got one other thing in common. They all lost their jobs, right? Which, yeah, you. But I mean, as far as media people, I'm having a go at the media, but there are a few honourable mentions. I think that deserves acknowledgement and fair play to them, regardless of what, you might think of any of those people. They stood on their principles when it really mattered, as did you. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that. And of course, Neil Oliver, Bev Turner, people that are, speaking out and continue to beat the drum now. I mean, I remember watching Bev Turner on, you remember Dermot O'Leary? Do you remember that? Did you see that on TV?
Yeah.
And she was like this absolute pile-in. I remember watching that with my jaw on the floor. And then she posted a picture online of her in tears in the green room because she was going to bat for kids and saying they don't need this jab, and she was shouted down and just treated like an absolute
Idiot.
awful person.
Yeah, she was treated like she was dangerous, awful,
horrible,
stupid, and it was like, what the hell, man?
And also distinctly remember in April 2020 watching Bill Gates on BBC Breakfast getting a softball interview, and in the same breath he says, well, we're not going to have enough time to fully basically safety study this stuff because we're in an emergency now. And the pundits nodding along because obviously he's paid for the airtime. He's just nodding along. He's getting a softball interview. We're not going to have time to safety test it. If you want to wait around for 2 years for side effects to show up, you can do that, but this is an emergency. And then in the same breath he goes, and by the way, we are going to have to indemnify the pharmaceutical companies. And I'm like, you've got to say something now. And this guy's like nodding along. And that was another moment for me very early on. I'm like, this is media capture right here. That was unbelievable that nobody questioned that.
But we've got such bad media.
We do.
It's just complete propagandizing garbage. They don't tell us the truth. They don't inform us of the news. They are shaping narratives, shaping perceptions, and crafting what we have to think now. And it's the language they use. So, for example, Iran and Syria are regimes, not governments. It's not the British regime, it's the British government. It's the Syrian regime. I mean, the fact that you've now got Jelani, who is a former head chopper for al-Nusra and al-Qaeda, wearing a suit, so you've now got a terrorist in the government. He's now an accepted leader. But when you had a former eye surgeon trained in the UK, he was a dictator. It's the language they use all the time. The Palestinians, Hamas are terrorists. They're not freedom fighters. They're not rebels. The IDF is the most ethical army in the world. They're waging war on the Palestinians because Palestine's got tanks and air force and everything. It goes on. And the way they did their thing against Iran, it's preemptive strikes. How about just outright aggression? It's the language is so clever, and that's always crafting. And then it's the same with COVID or the climate change, whatever narrative it is. It's bullshit. So one of the things I've done to make myself immune to it is I don't watch the news. I don't listen to the radio. I don't get my sources of information from that anymore. It's just all bollocks. I think Bob Moran does it perfectly. You know, up there on the BBC as well, the cow, literally. Like, you just don't. You get your sources of information from podcasts like mine, Substacks, from writers, watch documentaries like yours, you know, and even then, don't trust everything we say because we can get things wrong. That's the whole point. We try to tell you, don't just buy into us. But the thing is, like, did you use fear and behavioral manipulation in making your documentary? No. Do I use fear and psychological coercive measures in my podcast to manipulate people? No. We're just authentic. We just tell it as it is. But you can't get that from the box. That's not how it works.
Yeah, I think people desperately need to stop. If you're going to watch the news, I think you've probably got the right idea by just switching it off altogether. If you're going to watch it, stop reacting to it. Because I see this on both sides of the fence, where people, you know, even in our camp will throw a headline up and say, look at this is outrageous. It's like, yeah, it's designed to be outrageous. Like, you're giving it your energy and you're outraged by it, and you're also propagating it by sharing it. And I've been guilty of that at times. But, you know, as time goes on, you realize that ultimately they want outrage, they want division, and they want you to react to it. So if you're going to watch it, think about it, but also think, how are they getting, because there's always an overt, aspect to a news story, but then there's the subtext, which is actually what they want you, what's the takeaway, what's the call to action from what I'm reading or what I'm hearing. So look for it in those terms. Like, what do they want me to think from reading this? And it's quite obvious when you know what to look for, and just stop reacting to it. Because once you see how they want you to feel, you know, I'm going to go do the opposite then. I think division is a massive issue at this point. I've seen through the Israel-Palestine thing has just been so... I feel like Ukraine, Russia, a lot of people, a lot of COVID dissidents and people in our space, I guess, if you can call it that, saw through that, or, you know, saw the wood for the trees for Russia and Ukraine. But
sadly, quite a lot of people fell for it.
They certainly started looking to the mainstream media again, which was quite shocking. It's like, you've just acknowledged that they've lied to you for 2-3 years. But now
Putin's going to roll over into Brussels. And
now they're telling the truth. And it's a shame. You know, I think the country as a whole has probably never been more divided than it is now, which is playing into the hands of the people doing this. And, you know, there's a lot to be said for what's going on. And I don't know ultimately how we resolve that. I think we've got to look at immigration is a big divisive issue, right? And there's some very loud people on social media there's a very anti-Islam message being pushed. And some of that's understandable because, you know, the grooming gangs thing's horrendous, and it's the diversity, equity and inclusion ideological nonsense that kept Labour politicians and people from speaking up about it. That's all a massive issue and all needs addressing. But to then generalize that against all Muslims, I think is a little bit dangerous. And it's divisive. And ultimately, immigration, the sort of flooding of the country with migrants it's a symptom of a problem. And everybody's pointing the finger at Muslims. And it's like, who's opening the door?
Bingo.
Because it's not a Labour Conservative issue. They're both guilty of it. It's coming from on high. It's coming from transnational groups.
Bingo.
Yes. Why is nobody looking up instead? Well, we're all just pointing the finger at each other.
Philip, I'm one of the few people who keep saying this, and you're one of the few people I've heard it from. So, two things can be true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a Muslim for a reason. I don't like Islam, but I also don't like any other religion. It's all about guilt, shame, and control. They've all been captured by man. My connection is directly with God. I don't need an intermediate. So that's that. Okay, I just need to say that. So I'm not a fan of Islam, but there's a lot of really good Muslims. I've never in my life met someone who's a bad Muslim because they are a Muslim and it's like that's their identity and they're a terrorist and they're out there to create a caliphate around the world. They're just a normal human being who likes to go and watch a game with their son, or someone who likes to, you know, go to the cinema and eat nice food. They're just normal human beings. You can see them in the shopping mall shopping. They're flawed, just like any other human being. They might lie, they might cheat, they might speed. They're just other people. But the idea of bringing over a migration of an invasion of people from all over the world with different cultures and different religions and different beliefs, and Muslims aren't all the same. Muslims from sub-Saharan Africa are very different from Muslims from Indonesia or Muslims from the Indian subcontinent. It's a mixed group of people, and they don't all get along, and they've got totally different cultural attitudes. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very different mixed bag. It's like it's not like a fruit, apples and pears. It's like a proper fruit basket of different cultures and everything. And even within Islam, different religions, sects. Okay. This invasion is not good. It's flooding our native population.
They're not integrating.
They're disruptive. They're undermining financially, job security, the overwhelming infrastructure that's already crumbling and creaking, whether it's the NHS, the schools, whatever. It's not good. It's not a viable, sustainable option. But the right-wing pundits that you alluded to, the prominent people who get a lot of followers on social media and get on platforms and TV and blah, 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 they're very quick to point at the bad Muslims and the bad migrants. All right?
And I acknowledge there's a problem there.
They'll acknowledge the problem, which is true. They'll acknowledge that there's problems with Islam, which is true. But there's problems with every religion. What they will never... And they'll stoke the fires of division and hatred, but they'll never look upwards and say, who's orchestrating this? Who is behind the massive global logistical effort of transporting all these people? Who's giving them credit cards with money and mobile phones? What's the role of the Soros Foundation and other open NGOs? And what's the EU doing this? And what's the Kalergi plan? And why is every country in the West getting this mass migration, but one country in the Middle East is meant to stay a pure ethno-state? It's really funny what's going on over here. Like, why? And could this all be because these migrants are then beholden to the state? Could it be because the migrants don't feel any loyalty to the country but are now global citizens? There's so much involved here. And so two things can be wrong. It's wrong that this is happening, but it's also wrong to just call it the division and hatred for the sake of it and not point upwards.
Correct.
At the root cause.
Yes, you've got every right to be angry. And, I'm a father of a girl, and the idea of the whole grooming gang scandal, it's like, I don't contest anybody that's opposing that and stands vehemently opposed to that. It needs sorting out like now. It needs sorting out a long time ago, actually. But the Islamification of the UK is a symptom. It's a problem and it needs addressing, but it's a symptom of a larger problem, which is what we've been talking about, which is the controlled demolition of this country in line with initiatives like Agenda 2030. It's deliberate. People are looking to our politicians and saying, don't you know that we haven't got capacity? Don't you know that pensioners are freezing to death? They know. I've told you already. This is deliberate. Like,
this is their job.
It's a controlled demolition.
Absolutely.
And they're pulling every lever at their disposal. And they know these people won't integrate. So what we're going to be left with is a divided population like ants in a jar. And whenever they like, they can shake that jar, and we're going to turn our attention and our energy inwards and not be opposed to the people shaking the jar.
Even my mum can't stand them. My mum came over when she was like 60 years ago. She worked. She integrated. She goes, I've never taken any benefit or anything in 60 years that I've been here. And these people are coming over on benefits, working in the black market. I don't know how they've come over. They're illegal immigrants. Your dad and I came over properly. We were invited to come here. We worked our socks off. We employed people. We paid our taxes all our life. No, even now I have to pay the goddamn council tax in my 70s. Who are these people with their given the 5-bedroom house? My mum is livid. So this idea that your normal average Brit, your white ethno-Anglo-Saxon isn't going to get upset is ridiculous. Of course they're going to get upset. My mum's getting upset and she's not white Anglo-Saxon.
But there you are reacting to the news because it's there to rile you up. They want you to be pissed off.
No, my mum sees this in the mosque. She says all these new faces have pitched up and all these people are not like us. They brag about how the government's doing this for them and that. So this isn't even the news. My mum's getting it firsthand, seeing this, and she's livid. She goes, what the hell? Why does the government do this, son? She asks me. And I go, exactly what you just said. I said, they're doing it deliberately. They want you upset. They want everyone else upset. They're undermining this country and they're demolishing it.
Yeah. And you go back and read the Club of Rome, what they were saying in the 60s and 70s. That was a group of internationalists and industrialists that openly despised nation states. They saw national borders as an obstacle to be overcome, because how can you have world governance, global governance, if every country is acting autonomously? We need to bring everybody in line. And part of doing that is eroding any sense of national sovereignty, any sense of national pride. That's why you're far right now. If you fly a Union Jack flag, like all of this stuff is coming from on high.
And by the way, and this world government, I don't want people to think, well, what's wrong with that? It will stop all wars and blah, blah. Look, world government is just another way of saying a bunch of rich, really wealthy people ruling over us. That's all it is. It won't be democratic. It won't be accountable. It won't be any of that. It'll just be appointed wealthy people who rule over us. That's what a world government is. It's a world dictatorship.
I think the goal ultimately is for AI to do a lot of governance, through smart contracts and things. But that's where technocracy is at the heart of all of this, because it's the technocrats, the people building those smart contracts and engineering that system, that rule the world through technology.
And I don't believe that the technocrats are different from the industrialists and the cabal and the bankers. I think they're all in it together. I think they're all using each other. They're all on the same club. They're in that club and we're not. And all the bankers are now doing is changing the control grid system from one which was just fiat usury money to now the AI digital technocracy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that's all it is. It's a change of control mechanism, but the bad people are pretty much the same. They're just...
Did you ever think about... So we talked earlier about the anti-human sort of sentiment we're bombarded with, and we have been for a long time. If AI is hoovering up all the information on the internet, and therefore it's reading with a fair degree of priority a lot of mainstream news sources because it's told to prioritize them, and it reads that humans are destroying the planet and humans are awful people and humans are basically
viruses,
disease-carrying plagues on the world.
Yeah.
What happens when AI is in charge and it looks at us that way? You ever think about that?
Terminator. Remember?
Seems like a terrible idea for a start.
It is a terrible idea. Well, listen, look, we need to wrap up now, my friend. It's been a great chat. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was really fun. Nice one.
As I hold a gun to your head.
Help.
So listen, my friend, the final question of the day is, you're on your deathbed. Could be next week. You got your daughter, your loved ones all around you. Before you pass on and meet your maker, what words of wisdom and advice are you going to share with them?
Put me on the spot there. Question everything and do not comply. Succinct.
Well, I love that, because both of those are on my merch.
Okay, got a plug in for you.
Question everything and do not comply. Yeah, seriously, literally. And that is what it is about, isn't it? That's what we need to do. We need to stop complying, question everything. Listen, where can people find the movie?
So you can go to theagendafilm.com. So at the moment, there's a YouTube embed on that site. If that happens to get pulled, like most of our work does, it'll be replaced with probably a Rumble embed or whatever. So that's just a nice clean URL that you can pass around. And if you feel compelled to donate, you can do that on that website as well. So theagendafilm.com is where you can find that, and also Oracle Films on X, Telegram, etc. I don't know going forwards, what the plan's going to be. I suppose it will make itself clear to me when that time comes, but probably going to spend a bit of time with family and the kids and focus inwards for a little bit.
I think we should make a documentary about the medical industrial complex.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it called? Asim Hotra did one. Pharma.
He's a good friend of yours, isn't he?
No. I like your sarcasm. Very nice. Yeah, no.
I'm not getting involved.
I want to do a proper critique of the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
From medical school to postgraduate training to medical journals, the corruption in medical science, academia, research, funding, flaws of randomized controlled studies, everything. The corruption of the licensing boards, FSMB, you probably never heard of them, the International Medical Regulatory Authorities, GMC, you name it. The Quango courts. There's so much people need to know why they can't trust a doctor. So you've heard of the saying, first do no harm?
Mm-hmm.
You heard of that, yeah?
Yeah, Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah. You know what first do no harm actually means, Philip? First do no harm means first do no harm to my medical license and registration. First do no harm to my career. First do no harm to my reputation. First do no harm to my mortgage. First do no harm to my pension. First do no harm to my mistress. First do no harm to my private schooling. First do no harm to the patient, but as long as I'm following the guidelines and the protocols. That's what first do no harm means. And if patients understood that, they would change the whole doctor-patient relationship. Because when you realize that you are no longer the priority to the doctor, how can you trust anything that comes out of their mouth?
Mm.
When they recommend an operation, an intervention, an injection, a tablet, they say, trust me. Really? Trust them? When they're putting all these other things first before you? No, you cannot trust first do no harm by them. You have to question everything and do your own homework. Anyway, something for you to think about.
Well, if there are any wealthy listeners out there that feel like financing that film, then get in touch.
I think it'd be a good one.
I do, yeah. I think it needs to be made.
There you go, guys. All right, folks. Listen, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thanks.
Thanks, man.
Really
Pleasure.
appreciate it.
I, Ahmed Malik, am a private civilian protected by the Geneva Convention. My Substack, social media posts, and podcasts are my personal experiences, observations, and opinions. This information is for educational purposes only. Although I am a doctor, I am not your doctor, and I am not providing medical or legal advice to you or to the wider public. I am not licensed or registered with the GMC or any other licensing board. The responsibility for the interpretation, due diligence, and use of the information from my Substack and my podcast lies with you, the viewer and or listener. Please do your research and use your discernment. It is not my intention to harass, intimidate, offend, defame, conspire, blackmail, coerce, or cause anxiety, alarm, or distress to any man or woman, and the information presented here is done so with peaceful and honourable intentions. Enjoy, folks.